The Christmas tree worm, Spirobranchus giganteus, looks less like an animal and more like someone glued a pair of tiny holiday decorations onto a coral reef. Those twin spiral plumes blazing in red, orange, yellow, blue, white and purple are not just for show, they are the worm's gills and feeding apparatus at the same time. Thousands of modified bristles called radios fan into perfect spirals to filter microscopic particles drifting past in the current. The worm itself is about 10 centimeters long and never leaves its tube. It is permanently cemented into a living coral head where it can spend anywhere from 10 to 40 years without ever relocating. Touch one or even cast a shadow over it, and the entire plume vanishes in a fraction of a second, sucked down into the tube so fast it almost looks like a magic trick. Then, slowly, it re-emerges, found on coral reefs down to 30 m across the tropics. It is one of those animals that makes the ocean feel genuinely festive. If the Christmas tree worm is the decorative specialist, the feather duster worm is the extravagant generalist. Instead of twin spirals, it unfurls a single wide crown of radiolans that fans open like an elaborate feather boa, swaying in the current and filtering bacteria, phytoplankton, and suspended debris from the water column. These worms build their own tubes from scratch, mixing mucus with whatever is lying around on the seafloor, sand grains, shell fragments, tiny pebbles, essentially constructing a personal bunker out of local materials. There is no true eye on the crown, but light-sensitive cells trigger the same instant retraction response, collapsing the entire structure in a blink if the light changes. The largest species, Sabella spallanzani, can produce a crown spanning 10 to 15 centimetri across. In some areas, entire fields of feather duster worms grow together, and when a large fish passes overhead, they all vanish simultaneously, the seafloor going from flamboyant to completely bare in an instant. Polychaetids are the worms that everything else in this video is riffing on. With more than 10,000 described species, some estimates push past 13,000. The class Polychaeta is less a single animal type and more a sprawling dynasty that has colonized essentially every marine environment on Earth. From sun-warmed tide pools to Hadal trenches, more than 8,000 m below the surface. The name means many bristles, and every segment of every polychaetid body is lined with them, chaetae that can be silky, rigid, hooked or barbed depending on the species, and that in some cases will lodge in your skin and cause significant irritation if you handle them carelessly. Some polychaetes swim, some burrow, some sit in tubes, some are parasites, some regenerate severed segments. They are the baseline, the template, and for the fish, crustaceans and shorebirds that eat them in enormous quantities, they are also lunch. The sea mouse, Aphrodita aculeata, is the animal that has apparently never been told it is a worm. It looks like a wet, oval, slightly unpleasant rodent, about 20 centimeters long, covered in what appears to be matted fur. That fur is actually thousands of bristles, and under the right lighting they do something extraordinary. They shimmer with a shifting iridescence of gold, green and deep red, caused not by pigment but by photonic crystal nanostructures inside each bristle, the same physics that makes a butterfly wing change color. Material scientists have been actively studying those bristles as a model for advanced fiber optic technology, because the light-guiding structure inside them is more sophisticated than anything humans currently manufacture at that scale. Beneath the shimmering exterior, it is a predator, hunting smaller worms and crustaceans through the muddy sediment of the northeastern Atlantic and Mediterranean seafloor. It is one of those animals that manages to be simultaneously beautiful, scientifically important, and deeply strange-looking. The bloodworm, Glycera dibranchiata, earns its name twice over. Its body is a vivid, saturated red, caused by hemoglobin, one of the very few invertebrates to produce it. And when it bites you, which it will, it draws blood from the person on the receiving end as well. The bite comes from 4 hollow fangs that evert from the proboscis in a sudden, inside-out explosion. Those fangs are made of copper, specifically a rare copper-based mineral called atacamite that the worm synthesizes inside its own body, making them among the hardest biological structures known relative to their size. The venom injected causes intense localized swelling and burning pain, and professional bait diggers who harvest bloodworms commercially along the Atlantic coast get bitten often enough that hospitalizations are a known occupational risk. At up to 35 centimeters long and with a proboscis that can evert to nearly a quarter of its body length, this is a worm that demands respect. It looks like it belongs in a horror film. It lives in a mudflat. The bobbit worm, Unis aphroditois, is perhaps the ocean's most efficient ambush predator that most people have never heard of. It buries its entire body, recorded at up to 3 m long, though only about 2.5 centimeters wide, in tropical Indo-Pacific seafloor sediment, leaving only 5 short antennae exposed at the surface. When those antennae sense vibration from a passing fish, the worm erupts from the sand with scissor-like jaws, moving fast enough that the strike is nearly invisible to the naked eye, capable of slicing a fish clean in half on impact. The jaws appear to deliver a chemical that stuns or paralyzes prey, though the exact mechanism is still being studied. Its body is covered in iridescent chitin that catches light in pale gold and blue, which you would only appreciate if you were unlucky enough to pull one fully out of the ground. Something aquarium owners have done to their horror after discovering massive specimens living undetected in their reef tanks for years, dismantling the ecosystem one resident at a time. Arrow worms belong to the phylum Chatognathra, an entirely separate branch of the tree of life from polychaetids, and their defining feature is that they are perfectly transparent. Hold one up to the light and you can watch its organs working in real time. They range from 1 to 12 centimeters long and live throughout the open ocean from the surface down past 2,500 m, where they function as ferocious predators despite their size, using curved grasping spines around the mouth to seize copepods and small fish larvae in a dart-and-grab attack powered by rapid tail flexion. Some species produce tetrodotoxin, the same potent neurotoxin found in puffer fish, to immobilize prey quickly. In certain ocean zones, arrow worms constitute between 10 and 30% of total zooplankton biomass, making them one of the most ecologically important predators in the open water. They are essentially invisible everywhere and eating constantly. Ribbon worms, phylum Nematea, look deceptively simple, flattened, often brightly banded in orange, red or white, until they fire their proboscis. Unlike in polychaetes, the proboscis is a completely separate internal organ coiled inside the body cavity, and it launches outward like a biological harpoon to snare prey with startling speed and reach. Some species produce tetrodotoxin and other neurotoxins in their mucus as both a predatory tool and a defense, placing them among the more chemically dangerous marine invertebrates despite their soft, almost fragile appearance. Their bodies can stretch to several times their resting length. The bootlace worm, Linnaeus longissimus, found along North Sea and North Atlantic coasts, is reportedly the longest animal ever recorded. A specimen that washed ashore in St. Andrews, Scotland in 1864 was measured at approximately 55 meters, though this claim has never been formally verified with modern methods. Even at a conservative confirmed length of several meters, it remains an extraordinary animal that looks entirely unremarkable, coiled quietly in a rock pool. The acorn worm, phylum Hemichordata, may look like an inoffensive pale tube living in seafloor sediment, but its significance in evolutionary biology is enormous. It possesses pharyngeal gill slits, the same anatomical structure that eventually evolved over hundreds of millions of years into vertebrate jaws, inner ear bones, and gill arches. Studying an acorn worm is, in a meaningful sense, looking at a very distant reflection of the body plan that eventually produced fish, amphibians, reptiles, and humans. The largest species, Balanoglossus gigas, reaches up to 2.5 m in length. They feed by swallowing sediment wholesale, filtering out organic material, and expelling clean sand, making them important ecosystem engineers on the seafloor. Many produce bromine-based compounds that give them a sharp, medicinal smell, possibly with antibiotic properties. Some deep-sea species leave enormous, elaborate spiral feeding traces on the seafloor, visible in ROV footage as perfect coiled patterns pressed into the mud, the largest worm signatures on Earth. The fireworm Hermodice carunculata is one of the most commonly encountered marine worms on Caribbean and tropical Atlantic reefs, and one of the most painful to accidentally touch. Its body, up to 30 centimeters long with a vivid red racing stripe down the center, is fringed on both sides with dense white bristles that look exactly like soft, inviting fluff. They are hollow, brittle, barbed, and made of something structurally similar to fiberglass. They break off on contact and embed themselves in skin, where they cause an intense burning sensation and inflammatory reaction that can persist for hours. No amount of rubbing helps. The barbs are designed not to come out. The warning coloration is genuine aposematism. The red stripe is a signal, and the signal is accurate. Beyond the bristles, fireworms are active predators of living coral, fire coral, and sea anemones, eating their way across the reef with a patience and thoroughness that makes them a genuine pest species in reef management. The palolo worm of the South Pacific, Eunice viridis, has solved the problem of reproduction with a method so reliable that local communities have used it as a calendar for centuries. Once a year, at the last quarter moon in October or November, millions of palolo worms simultaneously release their tail segments, which detach and swim to the ocean surface independently. Packed with eggs and sperm, the main body of the worm stays safely in the reef. The released segments, called epitokes, are so numerous that in some areas they cover the sea surface as far as anyone can see. turning the water a pale brown and green from a distance. For Pacific Islander communities, this is a significant food event. Epitokes are scooped up with nets and eaten raw, fried, or baked, described as rich and intensely flavored. The lunar timing of the swarm is so precise that islanders can predict it well in advance, and the worm has been doing this long before any human showed up to take notice. The ice worm, Mesenchitreus solifugus, is the only known animal that spends its entire life inside glacial ice, not on ice, not near ice, but burrowed into the body of living glaciers across Alaska and the Pacific Northwest. Its survival window is absurdly narrow. Temperatures above roughly 5 degrees Celsius cause its cell membranes to break down and it dies. Temperatures below freezing are equally fatal. It exists in a band of a few degrees inside frozen water, living on algae, bacteria, and wind-blown pollen that accumulate on the glacier surface. Every evening, ice worms emerge from within the glacier in massive numbers. Populations in individual glaciers are estimated in the billions, covering the surface in shifting black sheets, before retreating back into the ice by morning. Their enzymes function optimally at temperatures that would cause the proteins of virtually any other complex animal to stop working entirely. As glaciers shrink due to climate change, ice worm populations are retreating with them. The zombie worm Osedax mucofloris was unknown to science until 2002, when researchers from the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute discovered it consuming whale bones on the deep-sea floor. It has no mouth, it has no stomach, it drills root-like structures directly into the lipid-rich matrix of whale bone and hosts colonies of symbiotic bacteria inside a specialized internal organ, the bacteria doing the actual digestion and returning nutrients to the worm in exchange for shelter. Only the females are large enough to see, reaching 1 to 7 centimeters with feathery pink plumes extending from the bone surface. The males are microscopic, under 1 mm, and live permanently inside the female's body cavity in groups of dozens to potentially hundreds. More than 30 species of Osedax have now been described, collectively responsible for a significant portion of the decomposition of whale skeletons on the seafloor. Without them, whale falls would last considerably longer than they do. They are the cleanup crew that nobody knew existed until the deep sea finally gave up one of its secrets. The Pompeii worm, Alvinella pompeiana, builds papery tubes directly onto the walls of hydrothermal vent chimneys in the Pacific Ocean, which is the equivalent of constructing your house on the side of a slowly erupting underwater volcano. The posterior end of its tube, pressed against the chimney, sits in water that can reach 80 degrees Celsius, making it the most heat-tolerant complex animal currently known to science. Its head extends into cooler surrounding water at around 22 degrees Celsius. The worm is about 12 centimeters long and is coated on its back in a thick layer of symbiotic bacteria that forms a white fleece-like covering. Whether those bacteria are insulating the worm, feeding on it, or engaged in some more mutual arrangement is still genuinely debated. Discovered in the 1980s and named after the Roman city buried by volcanic heat, the Pompeii worm remains incompletely understood, which for an animal living in near boiling water on an active volcanic structure in the pitch-dark deep ocean feels entirely appropriate. The giant tube worm, Riftia pachyptala, reaches 2.4 meters in length and has no mouth, no gut, and no digestive system of any kind, and it is thriving. Discovered in 1977 by researchers aboard the submersible Alvin at hydrothermal vents along the East Pacific Rise, it survives entirely on chemosynthetic bacteria housed inside a specialized organ called the trophosome, which can account for up to half the worm's entire body weight. Those bacteria convert hydrogen sulfide venting from the seafloor into organic carbon, bypassing sunlight entirely. The worm's enormous red plume, the largest gill structure of any known worm, absorbs both oxygen and toxic hydrogen sulfide simultaneously from the surrounding water, shuttling both to the trophosome. Under ideal vent conditions, Riftia grows at approximately 85 centimeters per year, making it the fastest-growing marine invertebrate known. Colonies of hundreds sway in the warm vent current in total darkness, 2,500 m below the surface, in an ecosystem that runs entirely on volcanic chemistry. The Priapulid worm, or penis worm, a name bestowed without any apparent hesitation by the scientific community, is a living fossil in the most literal sense available. Its body plan, a cylindrical wrinkled tube topped with a spiky aversible proboscis, is essentially identical to fossils found in Cambrian rock approximately 508 million years old, from a time when the most complex animals on Earth were still figuring out how to make eyes. About 20 species survive today, ranging from 0.5 millimeter to 39 centimeters in the case of Halocryptus spinulosus. They live buried in anoxic sediment that would suffocate most other organisms, hunting polycate worms with their tooth-lined proboscis. Their evolutionary significance is considerable. Preapulids are among the earliest animals to evolve a true through gut, a continuous tube from mouth to anus, which is the basic digestive architecture that vertebrates, including humans, still use. This design has apparently not needed any meaningful improvement in 500 million years. Myzostamids are polychaete worms, so comprehensively modified by parasitism that for more than 150 years, scientists could not agree on what they actually were. They are flat, disc-shaped, and typically less than a centimeter across, pressing themselves so tightly against their echinoderm hosts, crinoids, starfish, sea urchins that they become nearly invisible, some species translucent against the host tissue. They have no respiratory organs and absorb oxygen directly through the skin. Certain species cause their host crinoid's arm to grow a gall around the worm, a tumor-like structure of host tissue in which the myzostomid lives permanently enclosed. The debate about their classification, were they annelids, flatworms, or something else entirely, was finally resolved around 2007 through phylogenomic molecular analysis, confirming them as highly derived polychaetes. Approximately 170 species are known. They are small, strange, almost impossible to spot, and they have been quietly living inside other animals' bodies while taxonomists argued about them for a century and a half. The bootlace worm, Linnaeus longissimus, is the final entry for a reason. It looks like nothing, a dark brown or black ribbon, smooth and unremarkable, lying coiled in a North Sea rock pool. The surprise is entirely in the uncoiling. A specimen that washed ashore near St. Andrews, Scotland in 1864 was reported at approximately 55 meters in length, longer than a blue whale, longer than the wingspan of any aircraft in common service, the longest animal ever recorded. If the measurement holds, it has never been formally verified with modern methodology, and current scientific consensus treats it as plausible but unconfirmed. Even at the conservative verified lengths of several meters, the worm's proportions are absurd, roughly 5 to 10 mm wide, stretched across a distance that should not be possible for something that fits in a rock pool. Its mucus contains potent neurotoxins, including anabasine. When disturbed, it fragments its own body into dozens of pieces, each capable of regenerating into a complete new worm. It has been here doing exactly this for a very long time.